the executive microphone, so you guys will just have to listen when I ask you to be quiet. So, good morning. We're going to call the Administration and Projects Committee meeting to order. Note for the record that we have all members present with the exception of Tom Butt, and representing Tom Butt today is Sherry McCoy. I was trying to remember your last name and I blanked. So anyway, and
She actually doesn't remember your last name either.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. First item on the agenda this morning is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on any item not listed on this morning's agenda within our purview? Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public comment period, go to the approval of the minutes of our past meeting.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay. One abstention. Okay. We have 3 ayes and 2 abstentions on behalf of Metcalf and McCoy. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. I have been asked to remove item 9. Is that for a separate discussion or just take it off for now?
Take it off for now. We're going to actually add a little bit to the board letter. I want to inform the committee what we're adding, suggesting
so it's
to add.
coming back to the next meeting, or you're
No.
going to talk about it more today? Okay.
Correct. I'll be talking about more today.
So we are removing item 9 from the consent calendar for further discussion. Any other changes to the consent calendar or a motion?
I'd move that we adopt consent calendar items 1 through 11 except for 9.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. All right, on to item 9.
Yes, Susan Miller, Director of Projects. Staff would like to modify the recommendations on this particular item to allow for retroactive payment. The invoices, in that regard, the invoices would be dated prior to the adoption of this resolution by the authority this month. So we would request that the invoices received and we allow retroactive payment back to March 20th, 2013, and that is due to the fact that there was a misunderstanding by BART staff in that when we first moved money from the strategic plan to create a line item for the Pittsburgh Civic Center station, they thought that that was authorization for their designed resolution. But in fact, all that resolution did was to create the pocket within Measure J. And they were to follow with a request for a resolution to open for the design. So it was an honest mistake, and we've been meeting with BART to make sure all their invoices are in line, and we would like to request for that retroactive payment. So we would add that to the recommendation for the authority meeting.
Comments from the board members? Yes, Mike.
Sounds entirely reasonable, so I move the item.
I have a motion.
I'll second with a question. I guess that's the money been sitting somewhere?
In Measure J.
Yes, it's
Right.
been sitting in Measure J.
So it's just, right, but I meant, has it been anywhere else? So it's just been in
So
Measure.
BART has been making these payments to the vendor, and they're going to be submitting invoices to us for reimbursement for Measure J. We have yet to, we just actually received some invoices a couple of months ago, and so obviously we noticed that the dates predate and that the actual resolution was not open for that reimbursement. So this is what we're doing now is
Have we ever done this?
We have on occasion
Okay.
requested retroactive payments.
We have worked hard to train all of our agencies that they have to open a resolution before they can bill. We have denied payments in the past to local agencies who have not done so. So I hope there's been some firm understanding with BART, who's been around for a very long time. It's not like they're a new kid on the block. This is the way we have always done things. This is no new rule. Pay attention. Okay.
Sure.
I have a motion and a second. Yes.
Just a quick question, just so it's really clear, because there's a an undertone that this was all the way that it was approved. But to be clear, the project was a project that we were going to help fund. It was just the process in terms of how they made their request was out of order. But there's no question that this is something that we expected to happen. It was just the timing of the resolution process.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Sherry.
And just also along those lines, there's no additional funding. This is all under the same amount of funding that was always being considered.
That's also correct.
Thank you.
Right, it's just the timing issue. All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. It was a motion by Metcalf, a second by Taylor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, we are done with the consent calendar. Before we go forward to the regular agenda items, I should have, in my haste to get the meeting open, I should have introduced our new administrative assistant for projects, and that's Christina Broadfoot. Welcome. So glad to have you aboard. So, yes.
I was very pleased Christina came up and introduced herself to me. And with more staffers do that kind of thing. I thought it was very, very polite. She's from St. Helena. Even though that's the wrong valley, I'm from the Russian River Valley. We'll give her a hall pass on that. Can we? Welcome aboard.
Welcome, Christina. Thank you. Okay, on to our regular agenda items. First item is the legislative update. Lindsay.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll walk you through, there should be a little handout in front of you regarding legislation, and I apologize that it's a handout again this month. Next month it will be in your packet for review prior to the meeting. I had a little hiccup in scheduling. The first page is federal legislation, and last month was a very slow month. There was a lot of snowstorms and recesses in Washington, D.C., so this looks very similar to what you saw last month. There hasn't really been much action or movement. But on the federal front, next week, the authority chair, vice chair, and staff will be in Washington, D.C. to meet with some local congressional reps and committees and the U.S. Department of Transportation. So I expect that we'll have a pretty robust report on our activities after next week. The next page, moving on, is state legislation. And just a note on this, many of the spot or placeholder bills were introduced at the beginning of the year, and that deadline to amend them has just passed. So many of the bills in here were kind of placeholders at the beginning of the year, and now the final language of that bill has been introduced. So Mark Watts, our legislative advocacy person in Sacramento, is kind of looking at these very carefully now that the final language has all been through, and he will probably be at our May meeting to talk us through what bills we really need to pay close attention to, whether there are any bills that he would recommend we take a position on as an authority. So you'll have a much more robust kind of discussion about this in May, because we're kind of wading through all the new language that's been added. I'm going to come back to, you'll see highlighted on your thing, AB 1724. I'm going to give you a kind of I'll come back to that one in a moment, but I wanted to bring your attention to the last page. At the last APC meeting, we talked a little bit about the Senate Bill 1183, the bicycle tax bill, and I know that this group was very interested in that. So we've reached out to Senator DeSaulnier's office, and one of his staff members will be attending the May APC meeting to talk about it a little bit and answer any questions that we have about this. I believe the East Bay Regional Parks District is the sponsor of that bill, so we've also reached out to them to invite them to come and attend and talk to this body about whether we want to take a position and answer any questions that you have per your request. Jumping back up to AB 1724, which is the Construction Management General Contractor Authority Bill. The authority is a sponsor of that bill with Assemblyman Frazier, and you'll see in the back of your packet there's kind of some additional information, a fact sheet about the bill that was distributed to legislators, and a little brochure with kind of more information about what the concept is and how it affects agencies like the authority. And I know that Ross has been working very closely with Assemblyman Frazier on this, so I'm actually going to turn it over to him. He just had a meeting about it yesterday to give you the most current update.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Ross Chittenden, Deputy Executive Director with the Authority. Yeah, this 1724 is the bill for construction manager, general contractor, and it's been a pleasure to work on that. The bill was put in print last Friday, March 28th. 1724 originally was a spot bill, so the language that we helped draft is now in print. And the next steps will be a hearing, most likely April 28th. So we're working with the Assembly Member's Office and Mark Watts to participate in that hearing. A couple of things that are potential obstacles to the bill. As I reported last time, there is an existing authority for Caltrans for 6 projects under a pilot. So some folks will ask, why are we trying to introduce additional authority while there's a pilot underway? The difference here is that pilot is exclusively for Caltrans. This opens the authority up to regional agencies. Then the next item might be a little stickier. This bill is likely to, or what I advised the Assemblyman yesterday is that this bill is possibly, or maybe more likely, to get caught up in ongoing negotiations between the engineers union at Caltrans and the engineering and architecture, the ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies. They've been somewhat in dispute since about 1990 about roles and responsibilities for projects on the state highway system. So there is ongoing litigation related to a design build bill that was passed last year. So I advised the Assembly member he's likely to get some visits from both of those constituent groups. Don't know exactly where the lawsuit's going to go. There's going to be an amendment to the lawsuit this Friday. So I don't know if that's going to get resolved, or potentially that language, that's the objectionable language, may be deemed unconstitutional. So for this bill, we just left it out. We were silent about the roles and responsibilities, and Jim will amend the bill once that's clarified. So timeline for that to happen, don't really know. But it's in print. We all think that's a good idea, and we're opening the conversation. Part of what we expect to happen at the hearings is to get some folks from neighboring states. This is very, very common method in neighboring states. It's almost the preferred method in the state of Utah. So it's a tool we want in our toolbox when we reopen our program with a host of new projects, something we will hopefully do soon. And happy to answer any questions, and we'll continue to report on the status.
Okay, Noel?
Ross, thank you. That sounds great. I just wanted to be clear the way you said it. In terms of Caltrans and public employee engineering organized groups are against this. They're against our agency because they want to design everything in-house. But was ACEC supportive of the design build portion?
They generally are. As an organization, yes. They're supportive of design build. So they're specifically objecting to the language that mandates Caltrans employees must be construction inspectors on design build projects, which, at least in my opinion, introduces a third-party risk that is not good for the project.
Because if you design it, it's generally speaking, your license requires you to also observe it to make sure that it's being built in accordance with your design. And if you get a third party in there, it's a destiny to failure. But, okay,
right.
Thanks.
Yeah, so they're supportive of both this method and design build method. It's that roles and responsibility piece that they're objecting to.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance, but when you call it a spot bill, Lindsay, can you explain what a spot bill is opposed to a?
Sure, because I just learned myself earlier this year. So the spot bill was really it's a placeholder. It says, there's legislation coming, and I'm going to put a placeholder in it, a pin in it, until I come up with the real language. So there's a certain deadline where you have to submit all of your new bills. So a lot of times a spot bill is introduced. It's a placeholder, and then the assembly member and the agencies have time to work through it and come up with the actual language that they want to use, which for us took a little bit of time. We had to go talk to a couple different people and determine what language we wanted to potentially use, what language we wanted to use as a placeholder. And then there's a second deadline where you have a chance to kind of amend your placeholder to put the real language in that you want to use. So that deadline for the placeholder language to change it has passed. So that's why many of the bills you saw in here, for example, AB 1724, when it was first introduced, the title of it was litter control, which has nothing to do with, what it is now. It was just a placeholder until the language could be changed. So now that deadline to change the language has passed, and all of the bills in print are what they should be and will be for the rest of the session. Does that make sense?
And then, okay, thank you for clarifying that. I gather that Jim Fraser's communicating with us a fair amount on the language of the bill, or am I overreaching?
Well, no, I wrote the language,
Yeah.
so I'm
I
communicating.
was hoping you'd say that.
We're the sponsor.
Yes, so he's assigned his staff, who I'm in contact with probably twice a week, and I've talked to the assemblyman at least once a week over the last month about it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Anybody have any other legislation? I actually had one I wanted to bring up, and that's, and I need to know what happened to it. On Monday night, middle of the night, I think most of us got an urgent email from Eric Maldonado, or Eric Figueroa, about HR 29, which was to be heard on Wednesday morning. We took action at our council on Tuesday night to take a vigorous oppose position. This is a House resolution that was going forward. It just came up. It was going forward to prohibit or to predispose. It was asking all of the assembly members to take a position now to vote against any bill that would allow cities or agencies to outsource, contract out for services, i.e. city engineer, city attorney. Those are the two that my city got a little panicked about right away, and that would affect the authority as well. My city manager called and talked to the staff for this item. Apparently, most of the time when a House resolution comes forward, they go, yeah, no problem, fine, go ahead and pass it. Well, apparently they were getting a lot of pushback because of some of the emails that had gone out, and it was going to be a very interesting hearing yesterday. I have not heard how that hearing went yesterday morning. The staffer who had been in Sacramento as a staff person for over 30 years said she was actually looking forward to a discussion that was going to be somewhat lively. But I think we need to find out where that is. If it got through committee by any chance, we need to also take a vigorous oppose, because certainly we contract out for our attorney as well. But this would ask the legislatures to, it isn't to vote against contracting out yet, it's to take a position that they would in future, any bill that came forward asking for this kind of thing, they would then vote against it. And so it's a dangerous, slippery slope that we're putting ourselves in. I mean, asking them to commit to voting against anything that would allow contracting out gives us issues with what we're working on here as well. So if you could follow up on that and maybe email us a blast and let us know where that is and what happened, we'd greatly appreciate it.
I can definitely do that, and we can make sure it's included in the report for the full authority as
Yeah,
well.
I just think that's a real scary subject. Mike?
Yeah. Okay, thanks for bringing this up. Being that Moraga has a council meeting next Wednesday, and the deadline for, we can put this on our agenda for next Wednesday if we got the information from you.
Yeah.
Like today? Can you do that?
I can email out something by the end of the day.
To all of us.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
for all of us.
I added it as an urgency item Tuesday night, but, and we had our letter in there for the committee meeting on yesterday morning. But yeah, we need to all keep an eye on this. This is scary stuff. Newell?
Yeah, I was just going to add, given this other job I'm working towards these days, every single group I meet that has anything to do with the public wants to know whether or not I would support banning contracting out. It's just an unfortunate attitude. Like in Danville, we contract out 60% of our services. Mm-hmm. So as you know, we cut no services in the downturn of the economy because we rebid those contracts.
Right.
It's a win-win for the public. It's a win-win for actually our employees, our core employees, and it's really no different than the model we use here. We have 20 people on our staff, mm-hmm. and we're doing hundreds and billions of dollars worth of work because we contract out those services. It's good for the economy. So, if you do get approached by this as, trying to ask your opinion, I think if we keep the context that it's really good for the economy. It's a win-win for everybody, and this idea that you have to build up government at the large scale is not the most efficient way to do things, and it's not a model that's sustainable. So this is important, I think, to all of us, regardless, and it's not against our own employee organizations.
That's right.
It's a way to actually help protect those permanent jobs, those core jobs that are important, and allow the flexibility to grow your agency when you have the work and shrink it when you don't. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, we contract out our city attorney and our city engineer, and our city engineer is probably less than a third time. I mean, it's just basic stuff. And when we're busy, he gets more work. And when we're not, it's a basic retainer that's very predictable, and we don't have all the overhead. Same thing with our city attorney, and here we have everything else. So, I mean, we all do that. We contract out for all kinds of things. I certainly don't have a street paving business in Clayton. I, contract it all out. So this is craziness. Yeah, Mike?
Just not to belabor this thing, but so does this reach so far as to those agencies who contract out with the sheriff or police services?
Yeah.
Like Danville and Orinda and
I would
Lafayette?
think.
Would it?
I would
reach
think
that?
it could. I think we ought to find out.
That would be craziness.
I'll ask about those specifically.
That would be very helpful to know that, too. Yeah. Okay. Just a heads up, and Lindsay will follow up with us. That's great. Anything else on legislation? Seeing nothing, let's go on to item 13, the I-680 auxiliary lane, segment 2.
This is my item, Susan Miller, Director of Projects. As you're aware, the I-680 Auxiliary Lane Segment 2 project is under construction and should be complete in the next couple of months. A follow-on landscaping contract, which will be administered by the authority, is planned to begin as soon as possible following completion of the main project. Today, staff is recommending that the authority enter into a cooperative agreement for the landscaping project. The cooperative agreement really just outlines the roles and responsibilities for the landscaping contract, and it's necessary in order to obtain the encroachment permit from Caltrans. So what you have before you today is a draft agreement. Is pretty much your standard cooperative agreement for this type of project that we would expect to see. A new twist has come up, however, due to the governor's recent state of emergency declaration related to the current drought. Notwithstanding all the recent rain, that declaration still stands. So Caltrans in Sacramento specifically is trying to deal with how this affects all their landscaping project, including all their in-house projects. So staff has been working very closely with the head of the District 4 Landscaping Architect Department. She's been most helpful in dealing with trying to get this project to keep it moving forward, as well as the Caldecott landscaping project, which they're planning to go out with soon. And we are dealing with any new processes that are coming up. So I just wanted to advise you that there's a possibility we may have to return to modify this agreement. I'm not seeing that now, but that is a possibility. And one thing we have learned that's very important is the support of the water purveyor, East Bay Mud in this case, that they will supply new meters and water. And she has been in contact with East Bay Mud and has indicated that that does not seem to be a problem at this point in time. We're also keeping the town staff very much in the loop and advised of what's going on. So we intend to move forward. I'm hoping we're not going to reach any impact in delaying the schedule because we have to go through new paperwork or processes. So we'll just have to keep you apprised of that as we continue on.
Okay, questions, Mike?
Yeah, well, I understand what's going on here, I think, but the question, I guess, a little bit goes to the broader issue of, can those agencies who are doing work which requires Caltrans oversight of their designs, can they expect to see some new requirements for irrigation?
That could be. I mean, the thing that's been mentioned to us, and we're already doing this, is they would expect to see drought-tolerant plants. They would expect to see drip and bubblers, and we already have that. They would expect not to see spray used in the irrigation systems, things of that nature, best water management practices, and we're already doing that. So we already had that as a part of the plan set. So that wasn't a new requirement. But I think they are looking very carefully at it. The thing that I think we should be aware is that we are adding a fair amount of planting along Camino Ramon. And so we've been in conversations with the town of Danville, and they recognize the fact that Caltrans will expect on that side, along the city side, town side, that the town will need to have an understanding, have a maintenance agreement that they will maintain that, and that those meters would likely be in the town's name. So we're going through that process right now to look at the agreements in place already and see if that's adequate or if we need to have a new agreement. And the town has been quite willing to undertake that.
Okay. Noel?
I would just, first of all, I want to thank Susan and Randy and Ross for sort of helping us on this. Also, East Bay Mud, because when you get a meter from them, it comes with a set of rules, and the rules are we have to meet, as most of us, Mike and I, are in that jurisdiction. They have pretty tough standards about landscaping, so that's part of the design criteria. The last thing I'd just say is that any cost implication that's beyond the budget, that we are fully funding behind this. There is absolutely nothing this will cost the agency. But we do want an agreement with Caltrans, as you know, getting landscaping in, getting it to replace what was there, and then getting some standard by which it will be replaced is really important. They're against landscaping in principle. At least that's the message we get. So we wanted to make sure, as we all try to do, is that you tear out hundreds of trees. This was like a Sleepy Hollow Lane, and they removed 100% of everything. It's been denuded. So it's pretty important to the community, and I appreciate Susan's work on this. Thank you.
I would just have a question on when you were talking about who's paying for what. I'm not sure I tracked that exactly. Is the city responsible for paying for all of the landscaping on the meter, or are there separate meters for the city side and separate meters for the Caltrans side?
They're separate meters.
Okay.
We're adding about 3 new meters, some of which will only serve the town side, basically, of the landscaping.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to make sure that Caltrans wasn't going to literally
No.
soak the cities for their side as
No.
well. Sorry about that. It was too tempting.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I just want to dispel a rumor that we heard in Brentwood, that there was going to be a lot of cactus planted between Danville and San Ramon. Is that a rumor? No. It's not a rumor? Oh.
Okay. Yes, Sherry.
I'm pleased to see that you're working with drought-tolerant plants and drip systems and stuff like that. I think that's always important in spite of our recent crisis. Do you anticipate that part of this emergency declaration will cause a delay and perhaps some staging of some of these projects due to the situation we find ourselves in now?
Actually, that's an excellent question. So far I haven't heard that. I've been running that scenario in my head, that if we had to, perhaps we could go out with an initial contract to replace the trees, to get the trees in and get the irrigation system in, and then if we had to follow on, then we could put the undercover and the shrubs in. So that's I haven't gone down that path yet, but that's something I've been thinking about if I'm really find that I'm grappling with trying to get through any policies and paperwork.
Okay.
Well, I guess the question I'm asking, you want us to approve this, but then you could bring it back for an amendment. Am I on the right track?
Correct. I just wanted to warn you that that's a possibility. I've not heard that I need to amend the co-op agreement. I need the cooperative agreement for the encroachment permit department to be able to circulate and review the plans. So they actually won't even start circulation and review of the plan set until we have the co-op agreement in place.
Okay, any other questions? Motion?
I'd make a motion that we move authorization to execute a cooperative agreement number 90.11.19, Caltrans agreement number 042519 with Caltrans for landscaping.
Motion by Arnrich, second by Metcalf. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. All right, on to item 14, the big one of the day. This one is Randy's. Randy and Georg.
Good morning, APC Chair Pierce, members of the APC. In the earlier discussion, I think a third of my presentation was already made when we talked about the model of CCTA and how we're organized. It's exactly on point that we're an organization where we pride ourselves in keeping a number of our staffs at a low level of 20. And we look to extend to the private sector when we need those additional services. And today is an example of that. We do not have a personnel or an HR department, but when the time comes that where we need those type of specialized services, we contract out. To my left is Georg Kramer. He's with the HR consulting firm Koff and Associates. He has a contract with the authority to develop a total compensation study. There's two matters before you today. One is what we annually do, which is to come to you and request an adjustment to the salary ranges based upon the 12-month percent change in the CPI, the purpose of which is to keep our salary ranges up with inflation and the employment market. Those are not pay raises. Those are, if anything, the capacity for the executive director to give pay raises when under the circumstances of receiving a high quality performance appraisal. He has the discretion to provide adjustments. Unique, though, to this year, the board is receiving the total compensation study, and Georg Kramer is here to provide an overview of that information. A study like this is done here at this agency about every 3 years. You may be familiar with it in your home jurisdiction of a similar process where we collect data on salaries and common benefits of other agencies in our employment market, and we provide that data to management, to the board, and we compare where we stand to these other agencies in our employment market. Now, I said common benefits. There are some benefits here and there that are not so common. Parking is an example, and I would just like to remind the APC we already have established policy on parking where the cost is shared between the authority and the employee, and it's spread out over a 3-year period, and at the end of that 3rd year, the employee picks up the total cost of the $70 a month parking, and we're in our 2nd year on that step in. In terms of compensation plans, you can probably view this as a 3-legged stool of where you have the salaries, the benefits, and the total compensation, the total cost of what we as an employer pay for a particular position. The study attempts to quantify each of those legs and compares them to the median value of the same data of the other agencies. So why the median? And you may recall this was brought up in a prior discussion. Well, the median attempts to eliminate what potentially can skew the data by eliminating the high and the low. So that's why the median is typically chosen in this type of study. I'm not going to get too much into the details of the report. I'm going to turn that over to Georg. I just want to maybe steal the punchline from him and say that as an agency, as a whole, when we look at our total compensation plan, we are 3.6% above the median of our employment market, and that is the sweet spot you want to be in as an employer. 5% of the median, up or down, is typically where you want to be, and we're right in that threshold. Now, there are, however, some specific classifications. There are 7 classifications that are above the 5% median, and there are 4 classifications that are below the 5% median. And the APC may wish to address that. 2 of the 7 classifications that are above the 5% are greater than 10%. Typical methods of how those things are addressed in public agencies, to address the outliers, can be to freeze those salary ranges for a period of time until they catch up with the market. And then for those that are below the median in a significant way, adjustments can be done over a period of years. So, for example, if a position is 8% below the median and the target is to be at least 5% of the median, you would take that 3% and spread it over the next 3 years instead of all at once. So that's the general background of what you have before you, and we're looking forward to a discussion from the APC and some direction that we can take to the board on both these matters, the salary resolution and the total comp study. With that, I'd just like to turn it over to Georg, and he has a few comments to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here and present the draft final report of our study to you. I'll just talk quickly about the process that we normally apply, or the methodology when we do total compensation studies, and then get right to the results of the study. As Randy mentioned, you're probably fairly familiar with this kind of a process in your own jurisdictions. There are 3 elements that we look at before doing any data gathering for a total compensation study. One element is just to decide which data, what type of data, which benefit elements we're going to look at. That's usually pretty easy. We have sort of a laundry list of benefits that we gather data on, like pension, retirement, medical, and other types of insurance, leave policies, and things of that nature. The second element is to determine which classifications or positions to survey. In this case, again, fairly easy. We surveyed all positions at the agency or the authority. And the third element is the most critical, and that is to determine what your labor market is and which agencies to survey. There's a little bit more work and analysis that goes into that, and we were in front of this body a little while ago to have that discussion and received direction to survey 8 agencies. Most of them other transportation authorities or commissions, very standard. Of course, you want to survey agencies that provide similar services that you do. In addition, we did also include a city in the mix, the city of Walnut Creek, simply because that is in your backyard and therefore represents one of the employees in your immediate labor market, so it was appropriate to include that. From there, we did our data gathering. What we do is we contact each organization. We collect data regarding job descriptions, salary schedules, benefits data, and then we do our analysis. We do a job description analysis. That's important as well. We don't just look at job titles, but we really get into the details of what the body of work is that's being performed to make sure that you see appropriate matches in the report. The end result is that, as Randy mentioned, that the agency is within an appropriate distance of the market median. What I'd like to point out is, in terms of benefits, that your benefits package is competitive with the market. One of the things that we look at is pension. Pension has been such a big topic in the public sector over the last few years. We often see concern perhaps that an agency such as CCTA pays the full 7% of the employees' contribution to PERS. We have found in the labor market that that is still common with a few of the other agencies. We have also found that the balance that we see in the labor market there is that about half of the comparator agencies offer a greater or richer pension formula to their employees compared to CCTA. So there is a balance in that. Also, a majority of the comparator agencies offer single highest year as one of the enhanced benefits, which CCTA doesn't. There are 2 agencies that do not pay any of the employee portion to PERS. However, one of those agencies participates in Social Security. So again, there is a 6.2% benefit in that, or expense in that. And one of the agencies provides a deferred compensation program to its employees. So overall, with some of the nuances and differences, the pension benefit that CCTA offers is competitive with the market. We looked at insurance coverage, medical, dental, vision, other types of insurance. Again, overall, the authority is competitive with the market and falls right there in the middle in terms of what the overall expense is on behalf of employees. And then finally, we looked at some other benefits such as leave policies, vacation, holidays, administrative leave. Again, we found there is a balance here. While the authority offers a little bit more vacation than some of the comparator agencies, especially for management, it does not offer administrative leave for management employees, which is fairly common with other agencies. So again, looking at all the different nuances, we find a well-balanced benefit package that is competitive with the market. And that really sums up our findings and our observations. And so I'll be open to any questions that you may have.
Questions? Newell?
Well, first of all, thank you, and Randy, this is really a great report. And I want to go back in kind of reverse order. One of the questions was asked, and it's not really presented, I think, in the way we were looking for it. And it really started with Supervisor Mitchoff, who is not here. We'll probably bring it up. But the question was asked about looking at particularly medical benefits. So what I see is a comparison of what the rates are for the maximum rate for family plans and things like that. The question that we had asked that we wanted to see responded to was what agencies provide what service in medical, which means, like, for example, in the town of Danville, we only provide coverage for the employee. We don't subsidize other employers by paying for spouses. Now, they can buy those, and they pay for that additional cost. And the way I read this is that we were comparing, that full service rate. So am I missing that in there to see that comparison?
That's a great question. Obviously, that's has become a very big topic, is just the cost of health care and how agencies are handling that. We're certainly seeing a trend there that agencies are putting more of a responsibility on employees to share some of that cost. The way that is represented in our numbers is that what we report to you is the maximum dollar amount that an agency pays on behalf of employee plus family. And so what our dollars reflect would show that we wouldn't report to you the entire premium if in effect the agency asks the employee to share. So, for example, what the dollars you're seeing may represent is 100% of the employee-only premium plus 80% of the premium for the dependents.
But it looks like the way it's presented, just based because I recognize the numbers, it looks like those are all full family plans based on
the question being, are any of the other agencies, comparator agencies, doing what several of our cities are doing, which is going to paying for 100% of the employee only, and they must pick up the rest of the family and the rest of their dependents. Are any of the other agencies doing that? We don't know. from
Right,
this
I
data.
would have to go back and look specifically into that detail.
So that was a specific question that we asked previously. So that's, it's not here. And that was one of our
Yeah,
big
I
topics.
think that was one of those things we need to
were as clear
look
as
at.
can be, and we reiterated it when you were sitting there, and it's not here. In fact, we got it back the way we didn't want that in that area. The other thing is it shows on our dental cost, we're the highest by quite a bit. It's $223 a month average. Average is so I was just wondering, what is it we do differently? It must be Delta Dental that we do, and the other ones are not, or the other ones some co-pays. What we wanted to do was find out what are the differences. One, not to criticize, but to be competitive and understand what those are.
Again, great question. What I typically see the differences are is that as a smaller group plan with 20 employees, this organization is a fairly small group, and it is more challenging to negotiate rates that might be competitive with an organization with many more employees that are considered large groups. And so what we report, again, is the cost of the benefit to the agency, and it does not always reflect the level of benefit that is provided within the plan. So the dollar amount, it really just represents what the cost is. It may be related to the fact that you're a smaller group here. It may be related to the fact that perhaps age-wise, the organization in total has an older workforce than other agencies. So there are a few other factors that play into the cost of dental or vision or even medical insurance.
So the reason for asking the question, because all we see is the number. So it's like if you don't write, you don't write a letter, somebody asks you to read it, all you see are the things that stand out. So what stands out is that is a much higher number. So it would drive me to say, well, why is it higher? And I think Randy maybe is going to answer that. But the other thing that we show, and I didn't quite understand that, is that we do pay, it looks like to all employees, we do a deferred comp. And I'm not quite sure what you were saying on that. Were you saying that everybody else did, but it didn't look like they were doing that? We do a flat rate per employee here, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's one other agency that provides a deferred compensation plan as well.
Okay.
But in general, the other 7 do not. So that is one benefit that stands out a bit.
And then on your report, on page 10 of your report, 1423 of the staff report, it has a title called Holidays, and it says the authority offers 15 holidays, of which 3 are floating holidays. Our findings show that, and it talks about vacation days.
Oh, that's a very good catch. Thank you. It should say holiday days. I apologize.
Okay.
I will make sure that is corrected.
Well, no, there are two different issues. I mean, a holiday is one thing, a vacation day is totally separate.
No, I just was pointing out that I think he was going to talk about that. Those are a lot of holidays that we give,
Yes.
if in fact we do that many.
Yes, no, you are correct. I'm sorry. We'll make sure to correct that. But it
So
should
then-
say holidays, yes.
What was our vacation days? Is it the same for everybody? But I thought we had variable. We have management, senior staff has one, and then employees have a different.
For vacation days?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. The vacation days that are offered, and what we do to create an apples-to-apples comparison, we look at an employee with 5 years of service in this area. The authority offers 20 days
20,
to
okay.
Yes, 20 days to non-management employees and 25 days to management employees.
Okay, great. Thank you. I had some other comments, but those are the questions I had at this point. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Sharon? Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to circle back on the medical, and I do recall the comment about the premium paid, whether or not it was for the employee or for all the other members of that employee's family. And I apologize that it was not addressed in this report, and I can collect that data separately, particularly from the agencies that are represented on our board. And one other point about medical, if you look at the staff report, there is a table on page 14-5 4 that lays out the last 3 years of our medical. You may recall we recently changed our medical benefit amount, which shifted a greater amount to the employee. You can see the difference in a year-by-year comparison, where on average the employee paid, looking at 2013, $1,211. For the authorities, for the employees' share was $1,211 for the year, is now almost twice that, $2,043. So that has a result of reducing the authority's contribution amount towards medical and increasing the amount paid by the employee.
Randy, can I ask you for the full authority meeting, to break that out into a monthly cost? I think many of us in our cities look at it on a monthly contribution cost.
Sure.
And the reason I ask that is because in my city, we've capped how much we pay per employee, period, and they pick up the balance. So many of them are picking up $1,000 a month in insurance premium, medical. So for us to be able to compare to where we come from, that would be helpful, because this is, this is a 12th of what we're paying for elsewhere. So I think that's something that is going to be argued. You might as well have it here in black and white and recognize it, because it will come up at the authority meeting, I'm sure. Okay. Sherry.
I just had a couple questions. This was a comparison of the top level of the salary ranges in the different agencies you compared. Correct. So it wasn't really a comparison of actual salaries.
That's correct.
It's the ranges. So how are the ranges in this agency and perhaps in other agencies calculated? Because when you look at just the top of any scale, it isn't really reflective of what's being paid, because everybody isn't at the top of their scale at any given point in time in any of these agencies.
That's correct, and thank you for that question. The typical approach to be able to provide an apples-to-apples comparison in a study like this is to look at the top of the salary range. So you're absolutely correct. We don't survey actual employee pay, because any job classification or position could be filled with an employee who has a long career with many years of experience and is at the top of the range, versus a brand new employee who may be more entry level and is at the bottom of that range. And so by looking at individual employee pay, you're really moving away from an apples to apples comparison of how each agency values the body of work that's being performed. In most agencies, it is typically possible to move to the top of the salary range. Mm-hmm. Some agencies, of course, are different than others. As you know, some agencies, perhaps some of your own jurisdictions, have salary ranges with steps, where the step increases are fairly common for somebody to move to the top of the range within about 4 or 5 years. Other agencies, like this agency, actually has more of a performance-based type of approach, where there are no automatic increases given, no automatic cost of living adjustments to the actual employee pay. However, there is still, the salary range still represents how the organization values the body of work that's being performed. And so that top of the salary range, that maximum earning potential, is where we find the most logical apples-to-apples comparison.
I guess your overall conclusion is that this agency is in line because it's plus or minus 5% with other agencies, but really you're just talking about the ranges.
That is correct. And there is certainly discretion that the executive director has in terms of where he would bring new employees into the salary range based on their qualifications and experience.
Yes,
right?
Obviously.
And then obviously how quickly they may move up on that salary range based on performance and other factors.
Okay, and then you mentioned in the pension benefits that this agency is moving from the 2% at 55 to the 2% at 62. And you did a comparison of that with some of the other agencies, and it seemed like there was only one other agency that was actually doing something closer to, they weren't 2% at 62, but they were something else, 3% at something. Is your sense that all the agencies are moving towards that? And so 3 years from now when you do another study, because at this point it would appear that this agency is a little bit out of line, because you didn't give any indication whether the other agencies are moving towards that or not.
We all got to comply with the governor's orders.
I know,
with
but-
the PEPRA, and that's where it comes from.
Okay, so you believe that all the other agencies, so even though it appears from the report that we are different, we're not. Everybody else is going to be moving towards that as well.
That's exactly right. In the end, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 6 years from now, it may almost become a moot point because all agencies are moving to the PEPRA formula.
All new employees must go there. That's the issue.
Right, but that isn't reflected in the report. It's only listed the CCTA doing that, and it isn't listed the other agencies. It might be, you might mention that in there because.
Sure.
That's exactly right. That's a good point. In this agency, we only have what are considered the classic employees. We do not have any new employees yet that would fall within that new benefit formula, but we are bound by state law, just as all agencies, to provide that 2% at 62 plan for
new
hires.
employees.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so currently this agency has 100% under the old plan, if you will, but moving forward. But if we're looking at a comparison between agencies, I want to make sure that it's understood by people who read the report that everybody's moving in that direction as required by law.
Yeah.
And so it isn't like we're doing something that's different than everybody else and we'll be different as a different agency later on.
If I could just add one other thought here, what we have been doing in the last couple of years is what seems to us to be the most, the most appropriate comparison is to look at the tier of the pension plan that was in place before PEPRA came along.
Right.
And the reason being, of course, that classic members who move from one agency to another are still eligible to move into that older tier. Again, a few years from now, we may shift that comparison. But I can add some language to the report that points that out.
I think that would be helpful for some who may not understand how the law impacts the existing and new employees.
Sure.
But also with that kind of grandfathering in, it's going to be longer than you might anticipate it to be as people move from one agency to another.
Right,
Correct.
exactly. I think we're going to have that conversation for a number of years to come to figure out what is the best place of comparison.
That's right. Okay.
And the other question I had to do with, there's a wide range between the ranges, ranging from minus, what's the lowest one? Minus 8% to plus 20%, which seems rather broad. I mean, averages are nice, but they don't really reflect the true spectrum of things. And I was curious whether this range showed up, and some of the others you may already know, in the 3 years ago. Did that type of differentiation show up previously, and was there any correction for that or plan to correct that?
I believe we did find a range as well in the most recent study that was done 3 years ago. I guess I'd let Randy speak to the course of correction, and usually takes a number of years to sort of realign yourself with a market without being in a situation where you have well-performing employees and you're essentially sort of punishing them to readjust your
I mean, one of your
ranges.
recommendations is essentially freezing somebody's salary who's kind of out of line, which to me is sort of like, wow. So that's why I'm curious, was this picked up before, and was some recommendation done before, or are we just not doing anything and 3 years from now it'll be the same sort of minus 8 to 20%?
Go ahead.
Yeah. In the prior report, there were some positions that fell behind significantly. They were outliers, and we did make adjustments to raise them. And in that, there were also some positions that were above the median, And at that time, there was no action taken to freeze those positions, those salary ranges.
Okay, so is what you're saying that the ones that are well above in this report, the same ones that were well above in the last report? Or do you know?
Yes, for the most part. I can quickly look at that.
And I guess the question that would follow that, Randy, and then we're going to get on to Mike's question, is some of the comparisons depend on the specific job descriptions and how closely those actual jobs mirror the description, and whether the description in one agency is actually the same as what the other agency performs. So previously we adjusted one of the positions that was well below market, and that position has now been completely recharacterized as a different job, and it is turning out to still be below market. But
Right.
But that is something that we've changed the job.
Right.
One of the ones that was below market before. And so we've completely redescribed that, so the job description doesn't match anymore. So, we'll have to look at that. On the other hand, the position that is well above the market or the median may well be that particular job is far more intricate than someone else doing the same job in a different jurisdiction.
Exactly, but then,
Yeah, how do you account for that?
or how do you change the job description to reflect that? Because I think it's important to make sure that we're characterizing things correctly, so it doesn't appear we're way out of line on some jobs.
That could be. Georg, how do you evaluate that?
Well, in terms of what the job is, you would obviously want to, you could do a job analysis of that particular position. There's a pretty standard process that you could use to do that. The methodology we would apply would be to, have that employee, for example, complete a job analysis questionnaire and sit down with them to study what the work is, and then make sure that the job description is still in line with what the actual work is. So that would be the first place, and then make any adjustments necessary to the job description, and then perhaps resurvey the position to see if the outcome might be somewhat different. If I could point out a couple of other factors that play into potentially the outcome here. One is, as Commissioner Pierce mentioned, the job descriptions sometimes change, whether it's the client agency and, of course, also the comparator agencies. We have certainly found some changes from just 3 years ago with some of the other agencies. TAM, for example, is one of that comes to mind immediately. They really revamped some of their positions completely. So did Solano Transportation Authority. So just in terms of the benchmarks or the matches that we find at those comparator agencies to the jobs here may have changed. That's one factor. Another factor is that the labor market that was used this time was a little bit different. We used 8 agencies in this study. In the previous study, 13 agencies were used as comparators. So that may also play into the outcome a little bit. So there are different factors that could potentially influence the final outcome of the study.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our executive director, Randy, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, Commissioners, so this is the second salary and benefits study that I've gone through. The last cycle, we did make some adjustments. We are in trying to make sure that we're competitive with our fellow agencies, because as the stature of the organization rises, you tend to get plucked, or not plucked, but people tend to recruit from your team. So you try to make it so that they don't want to leave. And I would use the accounting technician. It's hard to find somebody or a classification that does exactly what that person does. And I'll use this example. When I got here, we didn't AAA anything. We didn't advertise, award, and administer any contracts. So the workload for that accounting technician is at this level. Prior to that, the county used to do all the work for us. But the classification is still called accounting technician, but it depends, or accounting clerk. It depends on, are they checking? Now they're writing literally hundreds of checks a month to make sure all those consultants, all the vendors, all the contractors are paid in a timely fashion. They check all those bills. So it's hard for us to find a class. So you go to Alameda. Alameda doesn't advertise, award, and administer any of their contracts, but they have an accountant clerk. So we benchmark off that. So it's a different Same name, different requirements. And it's hard to explain in these studies, the nuances of that. It's a different game. So what we tried to do last time is present the data to you, and apologize for not getting down to the nitty-gritty on those, and we'll get that information. We could actually show you what the results were last time, and we did benchmark off of Caltrans, off some bigger organizations that do the work that we do, but this time we narrowed the field to 8, and some do the same jobs, some don't. So Ivan's position's construction manager, they don't have one at ACTC, so how do we compare? It's very difficult. So this is really just, it's a study, try to make sure that, once again, we're competitive, to make sure that we can attract great employees like Christina and others, and Lindsay, and not lose them later on when they're trained.
Yeah, okay. You're done? Okay, Mike, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I come from a fairly broad background of, government and the military and then private industry, big and small, and now I'm sort of familiar with what's going on agencies, government agencies, and so it's a lot of different perspectives. And I'll share a few things. And I think this is more of a comment to Randy than anybody else. And, I remember when I was in the Navy, lieutenant got lieutenant's pay, and that was it. There was lieutenants, and the only thing you could do is get promoted to lieutenant commander, and then on to what was the next one up, commander, right? Yeah, that's the way it worked. And it was it, one size fit all. Okay. And then I went into a very small private company in San Francisco. You got paid what management thought you were worth, and they didn't give a what the guy next to you got paid. If they thought you were really, really valuable, you got paid a lot. And I just happened to be in that category. And I like that approach, you see. But I tell you, the guy next to me didn't always like that, because he thought I was sort of what the hell is this guy getting for? And then I went into Chevron, and that's damn near like the military. I mean, and it's very much like a public agency, because there they have these classifications, and you have bands and all that kind of stuff. And I saw some people got caught in a situation where there weren't jobs in this kind of a level, but there were jobs down here, but then they were needed. They were really valuable people. So they got put into this level down here, but they topped out. And so they couldn't get salary treatment because they were topped out, which was one of the most perverse ways to handle employees. And that's had a lot to do with why I retired early, because I thought this stank. And so I got out of it. And there were a lot of people like me that said, this is ridiculous. So it was the organization was driving some personnel decisions, which were unfortunate for the company. And now you come to this kind of a situation, and what I'm listening to here is something that's starting to sound an awful lot like the models that I didn't particularly like. The ones where you had the structure of the compensation packages were basically driving some personnel decisions, and it was not in the overall interest of the organization. So this doesn't really anything to do with what you're providing. I'm going to comment on that in a minute. But it has everything to do with what our executive director, how he's administering his people. Because if you've got somebody who's really, really worth it, they damn well ought to get paid. If they're not worth it, they should be treated in a different way. And we shouldn't have the tail wagging the dog. And I am concerned, listening to the discussion here, and I know what's going to happen when we get to the board. We're going to start having the process starting to wag the dog. And I think that's wrong. And I would just, I don't want to have to make the speech in front of the authority. I would really feel good if the executive director would make it clear how he intends to administer this, tell the authority, because I think they need to hear it. So enough said on that. The other thing is that I got to confess that HR, they used to be called human resources or personnel. We used to call them the anti-personnel department, and the inhumane resources department. You pick it. And why do line folks like myself feel that way? Well, because it just isn't the very sexy stuff. You care about it when you get your paycheck, but apart from that, those guys are going to squirrel away and figure out how to do it. Well, when I pick up an HR report, and I've got to confess, this subject here isn't my cup of tea. And I bet you, if you get all the commissioners around this table, to be honest, you'll find over half of them ain't their cup of tea either. So I'm going to just say what I feel. I don't get the picture too well without a picture. Lots of tables and lots of verbiage. I can read, but, sometimes I got better things to do. I want to see a picture and get the impression. And that's my point here. What you need to do is get the impression of how we are relative to everyone else. Now, Randy, you presented your staff report, and it was spot on. But, I looked at your staff report as you were talking, and that isn't what your staff report says. It's what his report says. But it isn't, your staff report ought to come up and hit you right in the eyes that says, this is where we stand relative to everybody else. And it should do it pictorially, because I bet you half of the commissioners are going to want to see it that way. The newspaper reporter is, first thing he's going to do is get his graphics arts people to do a picture of his data. I think we need to do that kind of thing as a way of communicating how we are relative to everyone else. I wouldn't quibble. I wouldn't even begin to quibble with any of the data. There are a few things that have been pointed out, which I think are probably pretty valid. But when you talk about where we stand within everybody else, and you've got all these, these tables and stuff, after a while, I just go, yesterday I stay awake. I was able to stay awake. But I just say, God, this is agony. You got to make it live for people. I don't know what you're going to do with the report, because I think you've done the job. There have been a few omissions, but you've really done the job, and I commend you for it. And I can see where we are, and I can see what we're trying to do, and I don't really have any quibbles with that, but I think as a communication, as a piece of communication, it does fall short.
One thing, just as a suggestion, for the full authority might be to remind them, and obviously the public who's reading that report as well, talk to them about the bonus program that we set up that is at the discretion of the executive director, so that, that seems to me that would apply to someone who's bumped up to the top of their salary range, but maybe needs to go above and beyond. That's something that's at the discretion of the executive director to be able to do, if that's necessary. And it may be good to remind people of that, to address exactly what Mike has just said. If you've got somebody that's gone way above and beyond, but they're stuck at the top because they've been there for a while, remind them that the executive director does have that discretion, and putting that in the language. And yeah, if it can be a little less dry, that would be great. But obviously what Gayard gets to do is kind of dry stuff. So I think, Bob, you had some comments?
This agency always amazes me. And when I looked at a lot of this, I read it, and it is pretty dry. But then what we're really trying to get is, are we going to grant a CPI? Would you tell me, isn't that the ultimate goal? Wasn't that in other words, we would be in compliance, or my city does that? Am I on the right track?
That's part of the track, absolutely.
And that's the ultimate goal of what you're about today, am I correct?
The resolution does provide for a CPI adjustment to the salary ranges, not actual salaries. And then we are presenting, granted, a lot of data. We'll work on the pictures about where our compensation plan compares to the market. And if you want to strip away all the data, all the tables and numbers, you can say, well, we're within that sweet spot, 3.6%, of the median of where everyone else is. That's really the bottom line.
But maybe we should start and finish with that, because these guys are real smart, and I'm not. But I do understand the ultimate goal coming in and going out. So, I don't know, I think we ought to versus, my good golly, all the numbers, who does what, who does this, what's going to happen over here and what's happening over there. I agree with Mr. Metcalf. You know, you should get paid for what you do, and Julie came out with the executive director's, what he does, granting extra dough for whatever. So, versus really making this thing into a huge boat, but I guess we can do that. But I do know Supervisor Mitchoff, you know, as long as we're not doing things that are not normal, and I think my city falls right in that aspect. So sometimes it's called keep it simple.
You know, Bob, you're absolutely right. Keep it simple is important, but we were asked by the authority to do a comprehensive review of the compensation packages. We have that comprehensive comparison now with our comparative agencies. One of the questions that was asked is, and was being insisted upon by a couple of our members of the full board, was that we look at how those other agencies are moving toward or not moving toward requiring an employee to contribute to their PERS or to their own retirement system. That's something that certainly the county has started to move toward. That's something my city has started to move toward. That's something other cities have started to move toward, is having the employee contribute to their own retirement and contribute to their medical premiums. That's part of this analysis that was not part particularly of this report. So adjusting the salary ranges, yes, that is one aspect of the review, the comprehensive review we were asked by our board to do this month. But there's a whole other aspect yet that we have not gotten into, and that is, are we going to ask employees to start to contribute to retirement, to medical? We've already made the parking decision and are phasing that in, but how does that contribute to the overall compensation package, and do we need to do any offsetting for that? How do we adjust for that? I mean, is it just the 2.6 straight CPI that we adjust for that? I mean, one of the things we're going to have to consider before we decide whether the salary ranges are just a 2.6 or whether there's something added into it is whether we're going to ask the employees to contribute on some of those other things, or whether they're going to have to dig deep and they wind up net neutral or a negative. I mean, that's something we have to evaluate. And I think if we don't bring the rest of that discussion in, we can't adequately answer the question before us today. So I would ask my colleagues whether that's an accurate evaluation of the perception of what we were asked at this committee to do. Newell?
I would just change that a little bit, and I'm going to have a perspective of, for 2 decades I've been sitting on a public agency, and we do this salary survey every 2 years, and I'll tell you what we use it for. As an employer, the one who writes the paychecks, I participate every year in a salary survey. There's threefold purpose in doing this, and slightly different. It's not about deciding whether or not we're going to do a 2.6% raise. That's his decision.
No, this is adjusting the ranges.
Right. But it's still, we need to hear that. The point of the salary surveys is for the executive director, or our city managers, to be able to use as a tool since they are the ones who hire, fire, oversee that. It's their tool, and we facilitated that to make sure that happens. And it's good information for us, but as from our seat, as the policy makers, we set a policy that we would do these salary surveys for the executive director to use as a tool to manage the employee pool. And I think that's important to recognize. It's good for us to know, but it's really his tool. The second purpose of this was overall to know, are we setting policies that keep the agency competitive? And the third one, we had very specific questions. If our employees contribute 7% of salary towards pensions, for example, what exactly, not in dollars, in percentage, are the other agencies? I don't see that in here.
The pension benefit, that is included in the report in terms of the actual percentages.
Did I? Okay.
I'll have to find the page, but I can certainly
Right.
point that out.
And
So-
basically, it says none of the others are doing anything either.
Right. So we were going to look at that. We were going to look at as whether or not employees were paying part of their insurance. That's a policy decision that we need to set. What I did not expect to see, to me it's a little out of order, that to have this report and then have a resolution says we as a setting a policy to raise 2.6%. That's really from a budgeting point of view, that's really executive director says, look, I really believe based on this study, I need to do this. This will keep us competitive, and here's my ask. In the budget, I want to add X amount of dollars. And that's what I expect to hear. But the policy level is it's about the benefit package. We are looking only at public agencies, and that's where everybody wants to work. And it is not comparable to the outside world. It just does not compare in any way. You do not get everybody wants to work for a public agency. Why wouldn't you? It's the only thing that has guarantees. On the world that I live in, there's no guarantees at all. And I will pay a person, I don't care if they have 1 year experience or 20 years, if they're the best person sitting at the table, I'm going to pay them the most. We live in a different world, and I recognize that. But I think the overall board was looking for those three answers. And I think our decision at the board policy level is, does our package, and are we willing to fund this package to be competitive? And is, competitiveness just isn't dollars and cents. It's based on, you got a great executive director who doesn't want to work for Randy. I'd quit and work for Randy in a minute. I'd learn a lot. I would get to do a lot of cool things. So all of that, but that's really up to the executive director, and hopefully we hire the best person to be a great leader, and we've done that. But there is a lot in this. There are some good details, but the fact is our what I see is our policy decision going forward, and we have to make that decision as a board, is whether we're competitive or not. Where do we want to be? We've had some increases here where we say, well, employers are only going to get a 2% increase, but our increases are going up 5 and 6% a year. Our OPED costs are 75% of our actual current employees. If you just do a chart, run those numbers out, where do we end up in 10 years or 20 years? Are we paying more for the people who aren't working for us for services that they provided years ago? And then we're trying to pay for the future. I mean, we have to, that's the policy decision. And in this, I see, the question is, and this is philosophical, should any agency, an employer, pay for benefits that cover other employees that work for other places? Which means, should we only be covering the employee that works for us? Because we're giving a subsidy to somebody else if we cover everybody. That's a policy decision. And so I hope we frame this, the result of this, only in, are we going to give a 2.6% adjustment? That's not the issue before us. That's one of them, but I really expect that to come from Randy. We have 3 policy issues in there that we need to make a decision on. And that was the real purpose of doing this.
I want to apologize. Page 1421 of the report actually does include the comparison of the contribution to PERS that the various agencies contribute. And we pay 7%, 3 others pay 7%. One is 5, one is 4, one is 2.79, and 2 pay none. So it is included there. I'm sorry. I knew I had seen it somewhere, but that is one of those policy decisions we were asked to look at by the other members of our board. And so I think that's part of, is 14-22, top of the page, starts on 1421 at the bottom.
Let me
And
conclude.
so
I'm really
those are,
happy
those
with
are
all
part
this.
of those issues that I know that are going to come back when we bring this to the full board, and that goes into what is our total compensation package that we need to offer to our employees so that we stay competitive, and yet we answer those desires of some of our members at least, whether we say yes or no, that's what the discussion has to be. But we need that data so that we can see that, and maybe graphically will help a little bit to show where we stand in that mix. Because I know that our supervisors are going to be pretty forceful in saying, look, we've got to start moving toward employees doing some of that pickup. What have we got to do to make sure the employee stays, in my opinion, stays whole? So, Mike and then Bob.
Yeah, here's you're hitting the nail right smack in the head as far as I'm concerned. We're, again, coming from the outside, from the private world. I look at these, the comparator agencies that we have is we're missing the mark. Because what we ought to be doing is comparing against the competition, and that's all our private consulting firms, all our contractors. Compare what is it, what do the Bechtels of the world pay? What do the small engineering firms pay? What do project management firms pay? I mean, that's really the field we ought to be looking at, because that's what the competition really is. I mean, yeah, there are some benefits to working for a private public agency, but there are some disbenefits to it as well. I'm wondering, you can't do anything about it for this particular study, but for the future study, is to maybe we should be thinking about, well, what is the field what is the competition? What are those comparator agencies? Is there a way to look at the private sector in the context of this kind of study? Just food for thought. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on how you might do that kind of thing. Maybe you already have.
Sure, I can certainly share a few thoughts on that, because that is something that has come up quite frequently in recent years. Again, an interest in comparing public and private sectors. There are a few challenges with that. Number one is that individual private organizations will most likely not share their compensation data simply because it's proprietary information, and they don't have to if they don't want to, or if they don't feel that there's incentive to do so. That's one challenge. The way to get around that is that there are surveys one can purchase that generally provide market data on certain geographic areas, or that will categorize all employers that they surveyed by size and number of employees and things of that nature. Those are surveys that are much less custom tailored to the client organization that's doing the survey, just because they're very general. The other challenge is that we have found in trying to accomplish private sector comparison is that, as I think you've both mentioned, the compensation packages, it's really a completely different world. In the private sector, you may not have the defined benefit plan with pension and other type of benefits. However, there is a much greater component of what we call variable pay, with bonuses and stock options and things that you unfortunately can't really do as generously in the public sector. And so those are just some of the thoughts and some of the challenges that we've run into in trying to accomplish those types of comparisons in the past. It's not to say that it's not something that you can continue discussion around. It would be a matter of figuring out what is the data that we could grab onto that would be meaningful to this organization, private sector data, that is.
I guess the question I'm going to ask in defense of myself, I want to make sure everybody understood kind of where I was going, was the fact was, how deep in depth do we want to go? And I know, and do we go this deep and in this depth at this point in time, and for another continuance of where we want to go, because every city right now is doing exactly what every city's doing. We're all worried about pensions and the medical, because it's going, there's sky's the limit per se. So I guess what I'm asking, if you come back, obviously you've been hit with a lot of questions, and we're probably asking for more of a complex report than what, because I read it as CPI. Sorry, that's how I read it. So I guess, Randy, I ask you, will this take a lot longer than what we had first anticipated, the report you gave us today? Would you come back at another APC meeting for more information? I'm trying to see, where do we go so we're not stagnated right now today? Do we continue this? And this would be probably between you and your director. So I'm kind of, what's the timeline we now have? Because there seems to be a lot of stuff.
Just one comment. The timeline calls for us to bring this to the board in April, the salary resolution. The reason for that is it's an important building block to our budget, which begins in July 1. So we are looking for action on the salary and benefit resolution in April. Now, the total compensation study, it's your prerogative. We've presented the information. We've made some observations as to where we stand in comparison to the market. Our OPEB cost is actually 9%, not 70%. And so we do have some data in regards to that for the APC to consider.
Randy.
Commissioners, I just want to add something to this. The beauty and the benefit of a salary and benefit study helps articulate the benefits that we as employees get. And it's a tool for me to remind everybody, it's not just about, some people complain they look at only the salary. They don't look at all the benefits behind that salary, because that's what they take home, but they take for granted the benefits. And I have worked for Caltrans for 27 years, and salary generally doesn't pull people out of a public sector job. And there's three philosophical areas that I kind of focus in when it comes to employees. Not only salary is one, but employees want to be competent, so we try to provide them with training opportunities. They want to be relevant. They want to be part of that team. They want to know that their decisions are going to be met with some analysis and hopefully carried out. And they want some autonomy. They don't want to tell somebody, I don't tell people exactly how to do the job. Here, we want to build an interchange. We want to fill in the gap of the sound wall. Ross, go find a way to do that. And he and I will strategize on how to do that. So, but this reminds the employees of all the benefits that they have. The salary, the CPI, we have historically brought that to you. It's not been my decision, at least, and by the way, it's going to be 4 years on April 16th. Thank you. I've lasted almost 4 years. But we've always brought the CPI to you. 1 year we didn't, it was deemed, no, we're not going to grant that. And the next year took the next 2 years and we added them together. This year we're bringing the CPI. Randy's absolutely correct. We've got to build a budget for next year. We're excited about next year. We're going to do some more work for all of you next year, but we got to get the CPI through either it's a modification, a yes or a no. As far as the salary and benefits study, we do that every 3 years, and I think we're refining our results so that you ask less questions. I love the idea that we try to pay the people that do the work, and if you don't do the work, there's always other options out there for you. So we use this as well on an internal basis to determine what the right salary should be and also what everybody else is getting as well, because you're in competition to keep your employees. I don't know how many calls Ross gets a week or a month, but there are firms out there that are calling all the time trying to get people away from here and out to the outside. So that's all I wanted to say.
No.
Rena, I just want to clarify. I look at numbers differently than you do. I wasn't looking at the 9.8% of gross salary. That's irrelevant. I was looking at it cost $242,337 a year for OPEB costs currently, compared to what we're paying now, which our employer care portion is $290,000 for current employees. which means we're at 83% of our current cost for current employees for what we're paying against. And if you look at total, it's down to 70-something%. That's what I'm talking about. That's a relevant number from a management point of view. It's not percentage of total salary that's important. It's how much money are we paying? And if you look at the amount of OPEB cost in gross dollars of current cost of those things for those employees, and you look at those numbers out 10, 20 years from now, that's how I look at it. Those are really important. So that was what I didn't mean 74% of salary.
Right. My mistake. And
yeah, we're talking
hearing
different
OPEB,
numbers.
I'm thinking of what OPEB is, which is the retiree health care benefit. That's something very different than the pension benefit.
Right, but I'm looking at just medical cost to medical cost. Our medical cost for the employer cost, 2013 is $290,231 gross dollars. Cost is $242 for the ones who are. So I'm just saying that's how I look at it. I want to manage those dollars because that's what's important. So I see three policy decisions. One, I think we are very competitive on our pension, where we are paying 7%. There's only 2 agencies that do that. I think we're really competitive, and I think we should, wave a flag and say we're doing a good job on that. I think on our benefit packages or sick leave, which I'm not sure if sick leave is included in our vacation time. Is that just total time off, the 20 days or 25, or is sick on top of that? I couldn't quite conclude that.
It quantifies the cost of the 25 days.
Okay, but that, okay. My question is, the 20 or 25 days, that is time off, whether it be sick leave or vacation, or is that just vacation?
That's just vacation, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So how many days are allowed? What are the maximum days allowed for sick leave per year?
For vacation
No, sick leave.
and sick leave.
Just for sick leave.
Sick leave is accrued each month.
Because I didn't see it in numbers and how we compared to other agencies.
Okay. Well, that part of the is not surveyed in this type of study, but we can certainly do that as
But
a separate study.
It is important because we give 7 weeks off to our employees right now, 8 depending upon what category.
Between
you're in.
vacation day, between holidays and
Yeah,
vacation days.
we're really high. We give 3 weeks off for holidays. That's way up there.
It's 10 hours a year, or
No, that'd be more than that.
Yeah.
That'd be
10 hours.
10 hours per month. I'm sorry.
It's a cumulative.
So 120 hours, so that's 3 weeks. So we give 11 weeks off a year, so 2 months and a week. Just that's a competitiveness. We got to know that. Sorry, that to me as an employer, when my salary survey I get, I want to know what my other employers are. So policy level, pension, I think our contribution to our employees is laudable. We're doing a great job. From my seat, and this is true of all the agencies, we're doing this in our community, that, for employers, one employer to pick up the cost of another employer's medical cost is not right. We're subsidizing somebody. I would like us to see move, and I think all of us as public agencies be doing this, that you're paying for the employee that's working for you. The public's paying for that. It doesn't make sense. Those models were back when you had one person stayed home and one person worked. We don't live in that world anymore. That having us as an employer pay our fair share for our employee, the other person, if there's a family there, they pay their fair share, and we allow that person to buy it tax-free. We do that in our company. I think from a policy, we ought to start to work towards that, and maybe the balance in that is we'll pick up 100% of the employee cost going forward. But look at that, and that's a competitive issue. But I think that's a policy kind of decision because it relates to that OPEB cost. Because our policy, the way I read it, says whatever we give our current employees, that's what our retirees get. And so there is a cost to that. It's a huge cost. And the other one is, I want to make sure if we're gonna go into the salary ranges as a public agency and use that, then I want to make sure that those ranges do adjust according to the marketplace. And I don't have any problem doing that. And if it's 2.6%, I think that's fine.
Do you need a specific motion, or is that enough direction to get you toward the full board meeting?
I think I have sufficient direction. I would like to ask the APC to make a recommendation with respect to the salary and benefit resolution so it can move forward in accordance with the timing of our ordinance, which calls for it to be brought forward in April. You can always defer the action on the total compensation study if there's anything you want to do in that regard. If you want to take more time on it, we can certainly do that. It's staff recommendation that you recommend the salary and benefit resolution with the 2.6% increase to the salary ranges.
So moved.
I'll second that.
A motion by Taylor, a second by Metcalf. Discussion?
So
Newell.
the way I read that motion, it just took away everything I just said. It basically keeps everything in as placed, and we move 2.6%.
Well,
That's
I
what I
guess-
read the motion as.
I understand. I think it goes part way to where we need to be. I think that, yes, it does adjust salary ranges. What I want to know is...
No, it said benefits, too. Am I missing?
No,
No, it's
just the
salary
salary
ranges.
ranges.
Okay.
Just the salary ranges. We have not discussed the total compensation package yet. And that discussion still needs to happen. And we were instructed very specifically by our full board at numerous meetings over the last year to bring this back in a comprehensive package. So while I can go along with adjusting the salary ranges for now, that's not to say that there won't be adjustments of some kind as we look at the total compensation package. Because, as I said before, if we make a policy decision one way or the other, I mean, some members want the employees to pay 100% of their employee PERS contribution. Others say it's fine to stay at the 7% that we've been picking up. There's everybody in between. We've got to make a decision on that, one way or the other. How we make that decision could affect the total compensation that goes to the employee. The same with the medical premium. If we ask the employees to start picking up 100% of their medical premium, we may find we have to offset that in salary. So I'm not saying that this adjustment to the salary ranges is the final one. I'm saying it's one at least to keep us on schedule. We may come back and amend that when we start looking at the total compensation package.
The only issue I had with this, it actually says benefits, right? Yeah. I mean, don't we really
It does
just
say
mean,
benefits.
it says authority salary range and benefits for fiscal years, and then whereas authority salary range and benefit resolution. Wouldn't we
Yeah.
want to just say salary ranges?
Yes.
I'm totally, completely fine with that if we,
Yeah,
but
because
is there some
that's what we were asked
implication
to do.
to benefits? I don't know why it's,
Well, without approving the benefits will cease to exist if there's no public policy that approves benefits for our employees.
but the benefits already exist. This is a change, and the only change that we're asking for, I thought, was the 2.6% in salary adjustments.
I understand.
So
And
we don't
it's
have to have a new
It's a continuation of the existing benefits.
But we don't have to approve that.
No, we can approve a
We
continuation
could say get rid of them,
the.
but
no,
we
no,
don't have
no.
to prove that they exist because the action was we approved them.
No, what we have to do is approve continuing the existing benefits until such time as we change them
We haven't
for
had that.
budgeting purposes.
Well, you don't need an
It's
action
the
to create a
budgeting.
budget. I mean, the budget is a recommendation from our executive director. I'm just saying, if you do this, you're going to have me and others who are saying we're approving something. In fact, we have a study that's giving us the information to help make decisions, but yet we're not making the decisions on the portion of the policy issues. So,
So we're leaving them as is until such time as we make those changes.
yeah, I don't think we need to do that because making a budget, you can make a budget whatever you recommend, Randy. You don't need us to tell you how to do it. You say, hey, I need this budget. Here's what I recommend. Here's why. But our benefits exist unless there's something in an old resolution that says if we don't annually say that benefits exist, the absence of making a resolution, they continue. Am I wrong on that?
I would assume you're correct, but let us check with Mala. I hear what you're saying. What you're asking us to do is move this resolution forward, sans the continue existing benefits, and we'll deal with the benefits.
Just be silent. We want to do an action, make one action, raise the salary ranges. Let's have the full board discussion. The board says, here's our decision. Go ahead.
And
But I
then-
think you ought to do your budgets according to what you recommend.
Right, and then until a modification is made to the existing benefits, we're going to build a budget based on those benefits, those
Sure.
costs.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, and then,
Mike?
Look, the reason I seconded the motion is not that I didn't agree with Newell, it's just that I don't want to stop the budgeting process.
Right.
Now, so maybe the answer to this question, if you can, is if we didn't pass this resolution, what does that do to your budgeting process? Yeah, that's the question I think you need to.
It would stay with the same pace.
same salary.
What I'm hearing is, you're going to get confirmation from Mala, yeah, okay. But that's really the issue I think that I and a lot of other people are going to be wanting to know, that if we don't move along with this thing now, does that throw us off the rails when it
It
comes to
stays
that?
with the same salary ranges as we have
Business-
today.
Business as usual.
Right. If there was no action today, we would move forward with the best information that we have, which is no change to anything.
Right.
But we're recommending, this committee.
Just the salary ranges.
We want to recommend today so that the board knows we support this, that we want to raise the salary ranges. And then at the board level, we'll have a discussion on the other things to make any upward, downward adjustments that are appropriate for benefits.
And it could mean that once we talk about the full compensation package, the
It might be-
medical, the PERS, all of that,
Might just
the
agree.
board may say, change the salary ranges by 5%. I don't know. I mean, they can change that number at the full authority meeting if we decide we need to. I mean, otherwise, we never get to the discussion that was asked for by the full board. Okay? So I have a motion by Taylor, a second by Metcalf, and the clarifying, I'm asking both of them. The clarification on that motion is this applies to the salary ranges alone and continuing the existing benefit package
That's how,
for budgeting purposes.
that's how I read it.
Is that the motion? Well, yes, it's a recommendation to the full board. And then, obviously, we'll have that discussion and the full board will make a decision. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Everybody's clear on the
Can we have a
motion?
clarification? How does Christina, how have you got this motion at this point?
I got this motion as raising the salary range only and continuing with existing benefits.
Okay. I've got the seconder agrees, the first agrees. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Yes. Mike?
Given the length of the discussion that we had here, and then also the one on parking, as I recall, that went on with the authority for something approaching an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours even. I can just imagine that this is going to be one whopper in front of the full board. So, if there's a whole lot of other things on the agenda, it might be
They might
some-
want to move to consent.
We're all now.
Yeah, well, but it is a discussion we've been putting off for months and months and months, and we knew it was going to come, and we were going to have the discussion, so
And it's important.
it is important, so. All right, the next item on the agenda is a proposed fund exchange for the Brentwood Agricultural Land Trust Priority Conservation Area Project, a swap with MTC, changing the color of money. I have a motion by Arnerich to approve.
I second it.
A second by Taylor. Any further discussion, any comment from the public? A comment from Metcalf?
Well, come on. I read this and I read it again and again and again, and I kept on asking the questions, why are we doing this again?
Changing the color of the money,
Yeah, I mean.
the funding source to allow something that's eligible to pay for it.
Some credit. I can figure out the color.
Okay.
But-
Okay.
But the question is still, why are we doing this now? Why is this why are we in this? Is this the business that we're in, changing colors of money? That's kind of an MTC trick, isn't it?
Oh, we've done it for a long time.
Well,
Touch your mic on, Mike.
so I'd like to know the backstory on this. I'm sure there is one.
Maybe. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Hisham Noemi. I'm the engineering manager. When MTC created the OBAG program, including the priority conservation area, there was an expectation that the CMAs will help to facilitate it because of the reasons you know, that you couldn't use federal transportation funds to protect open lands. So that was the expectation, that wasn't their guidelines when they adopted it, and that's our way to help basically MTC and BALT achieve the goals of that program.
And if I might add a little bit, I maybe more direct your question. Staff feels this as being a good partner in furthering policy objectives that we'd want to embrace.
It's just, it's got a bad odor. Something about it. It's just, why are we hauling somebody else's water here from? I don't quite get this. I mean, here's what I'm concerned about. I can see that it's not impacting us financially and so forth, but I go out there and look at the folks on the street who pick up the paper and they read that there's a CCTA outfit, which they don't know much about anyway. The surveys have already shown us that, and now they're hearing, courtesy of some reporters, that we're in the business of changing the color of money around, and it has a, you look for the clothespin, and it just something doesn't look right here, and I'm wondering, why are we doing this kind of thing? You just said we're doing it to be a good neighbor.
Well,
Really?
let me interrupt here just a minute. We do this all the time when we have federal monies that are restricted on how they can be spent, and we need a little tiny project that's not eligible for federal money, and we need something to be done like CMAQ funds. So we swap Measure J for CMAQ funds. We use our local money to pay for the little local project, and we use the federal money for a bigger project. And we swap them out all the time to get the maximum amount done with the least amount of paperwork and compliance, strings attached, so that we can get everything done in a timely manner the most efficiently we can. We do that all the time.
And I would just add that it's also, I don't actually like the clothespin analogy, and the reason why is that we know in the funds that we get in order to build a project, if you have federal funds, you must have matching funds. We know what all those rules are, and they're pretty complex. This is our objective. This project, what we're trying to accomplish, is one of our objectives. And when we move funds that have different strings attached, we do it, but it nets out to be the same effect. Mm-hmm. But the money does have different restrictions on it. It's no different than you can't use a personal credit card to pay certain bills. You can't pay your mortgage with a credit card, because they're not going to give you a discount. You can only use cash. In this case, it's the same thing, and because they are a partner in the project and we have a vested interest in the project, shifting those funds that have the right restrictions to apply to the right project objective, and that we come out net whole, is what's really important. And sometimes you might not be able to do that. We've done it on the auxiliary lane projects. We've done it on a lot of projects. We also advance funds to make sure that they do qualify. But what's real important, and I think the public needs to know this, every single dollar that goes through this agency is checked and double-checked to make sure that it fully qualifies, it's fully vetted for the appropriate source, the rules that go along with it, and all the reporting. And we have Caltrans on many of these that actually oversees how we spend the money, because if there's federal money in it, by law, they have to be the agency to look at doing the matching fund, and they have to do the administration of it. So while it looks unusual sometimes when it stands out based on the title, the reality is it's still part of our mission objective, and it is just a reassignment of those dollars to prioritize them in the right order to make sure our project objectives get done. but the public should know that these are fully vetted and fully held accountable, that they are spent in the appropriate ways.
Just briefly, I agree. I think it's being a good partner and helping achieve the goals of what CCTA is supposed to be doing.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I have a motion by Arnrich, a second by Taylor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. State Road 4, Laurel to Sand Creek Road widening, and this is a change order with one of our favorite developers.
And we'll be brief with that. I'd ask Amin to introduce the item, and I can answer the question if we want to just do that too.
Okay.
So moved.
I have a motion by Taylor
I'll second.
and a second by McCoy. Further discussion? Mike?
All right. Why are we doing this? You know, what is this? Is this really the business we're in?
So this.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Getting it appreciated.
We're moving dirt.
Yeah, so we're out there doing some grading out on the Sand Creek project, and there's an adjacent property owner who's in the process of doing a development. If that work's not done now, then their work will intrude back into the state's right-of-way. So there would be an impact to the public at that time. So we're avoiding that public impact in the future by doing the work today.
Another analogy would be, you just pave your road, utility company comes through and says, oh, we've got to put new utilities down the road, so they trench cut down your freshly paved road, and then you patch it. And people are going, why are you doing that? Why didn't you do it all at once?
So we want to do it all at once.
So good coordination is what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Whether you have a comment about who we're dealing with or not, it's good coordination.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, why, you know, I would ask, well, why didn't you say it that way?
Well, I guess,
You know, I mean,
Mike,
that's-
it goes back to when we talked about this the last time. When we executed the agreement with them to cooperate on the project, that was all discussed. This is just a change order to that original project, and you probably weren't at that meeting, so you probably didn't hear that discussion. But maybe it should have been referred to in the
Yeah, it
staff
sure should
report
have,
a little
because,
bit more.
because, you know, when a question gets asked, it's oftentimes asked for a good reason.
Right.
Because something isn't clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear here. The question is, just like the previous item, why are we doing this?
Okay, so I would suggest, because of the length that we're going to have to go for the previous items on our next agenda, that when this goes to the full board, this goes on consent,
Yeah, well,
with a better description.
correct. Yeah, we'll do that too.
Okay?
And the other issue, perhaps, Mike, maybe Susan, you can fill him in too. I'd like to make sure that maybe there was some, I remember the discussion, and we had to come together, both the developer and, am I right?
Right.
We had to meet. In fact, it was a long ordeal, but let's make sure he's
Yeah,
filled in on it.
It was several meetings of
Yes, it was.
coordination to get it done, but yes, that is the intent. All right, we have a motion by Taylor, a second by McCoy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously as well. Correspondence and news clippings, as appropriate. The commissioner and staff comments. I have no comments. Commissioner, yes.
Yeah, I've become spoiled by this agency that when I pull up a PDF of a 295-page package,
We need books.
you know, I'm able to go up here to view and page navigation, and it comes up with bookmarks. And I open up the bookmarks, and I can go right down. There's a nice index right on through the document. I can just click on it and get where I want. So what I had to do with this one, just to justify why I'm complaining gently, is I had to go through and find the start of everything and put a page note here.
Yep.
And so I have to go through the thumbnails, and, you know, come on, I got better things to do with my time than
Yeah.
this.
We
So
just
I don't
need
know
to-
how you do it, or how, I don't know, Denise knows exactly what I'm talking about. But you know, I mean, this is 295 pages.
Christina is new, so talk to Denise and others about how to get those bookmarks back into the packet.
We'll love you for it.
Yes, yeah, when it's this long, it really takes a long time to scroll through on the computer. And we're trying to get more people to go paperless, so that's very helpful.
Welcome to your first meeting, Christine.
Just a gentle suggestion, thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, executive staff comments? Nothing? All right, we are adjourned, 10:32. Thank you all. We will see you on May 1st.
Staff comments.